Hello everyone, this is Ketchup here. First of all, sorry about all this that's going on. I'm still stuck in lockdown where I live, so that's the answer to that question. Second of all, I have a very important announcement to make. You can skip to the beginning of the video if you wish, but I'll keep this one quick. Those that have been watching the content for a while might have noticed the past couple of weeks there's been some extra graphics and icons at the end of our videos. That is because, as of very recently, Mustard and myself have officially joined the Smash Esports team as official content creators. Now, that basically means that the content channels, they're going to continue, and they're going to continue to do their thing. The Twitch isn't going to be different, nor is the YouTube, and nor do we have any intention of changing anything. What it does mean is that using our combined resources, we will be able to provide some extra content on the Smash Esports channels, their social media, Twitter, all that good stuff. And you can go and find them on all necessary links. I've linked it all in the description. I do want to extend a massive thank you to the team for bringing us on board and giving us this opportunity, especially during these times. And we're excited for a future to come. Now, with all that said and done, thank you to them once more, and for you, enjoy this latest episode of the MK Meta.
The crushing pound of the mallet. The shattering blow of the club. The slashing edge of the blade. They call to you.
It's 1997. The world of video games is taking a major dive into 3D graphics, and consoles like the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo 64 have hit the video game market. It seemed that every popular franchise out there was taking the plunge and capitalizing on the new wave of technology. This was when Mortal Kombat 4 hit the arcade scene as the latest installment to the series. Taking a lot of gameplay inspiration from the title before it, MK4 was another game heavily focused on the run button, built-in combo strings, and a fast pace, with some new mechanics on top that definitely make the title stand out on its own. With an aggressive marketing campaign like the Mortal Kombat 4 Road Tour in the States, and the media countrywide covering it like nobody's business, MK4 was the final MK game to end the arcade era. It was the final Mortal Kombat title to be released on arcades in general, and around 1997, arcades themselves were not as popular as they used to be, with the gigantic growth of the home console market. A lot of people, especially if you didn't grow up with an arcade near you, would have remembered MK4 via the N64 and PlayStation versions mostly, but as this is the MK Meta, I'm going to highlight the arcade version mostly, as it was the first, having reached out to many old school MK heads that played the game at a high level back in the 90s. This game is a title that certainly stands out amongst its other installments, and it has taken a while to really come to grips with it for me, as I only played it casually as a kid. Like all these games, there is a lot to learn before making the video in general. Allow me to take you into the MK meta of Mortal Kombat 4. The plot sets the stage as you enter the Attract mode. Shinnok, one of the Elder Gods who helps to control the 6 realms, attempts to rise to power and conquer them all. He is defeated by Raiden and banished to the Netherrealm for eternity. Now, in the events of MK4, he is released from the Netherrealm with the help of Quan Chi, first conquering the realm of Edenia due to the assistance of Tanya. Raiden gathers more defenders to stop Shinnok's menace. As it's an arcade game, there isn't a lot in terms of game modes. You have standard 1v1, which is either 2 players head-to-head if you have enough credits, going it solo in the arcade mode. It's worth noting that in arcade MK4, there was no sub-boss. Although many of us remember fighting Goro and getting demolished by his cheap move-reading AI, he actually made an appearance in console MK4 and was missing in the arcade. Shinnok was the final boss. You have a variety of difficulties that changes AI and how many opponents you face. It's very much a standard arcade tower. 2v2, like UMK3, is exactly as it sounds. Pick 2 fighters and they go into each round with a life bar each. Whoever takes out both characters first is the winner. Finally, Group lets you cycle the entire cast. Reach the end of this by using every character, and you get to play as Meat, who is just a model swap of any character that you pick. I have already covered him in my competitive history episode about the character. MK4 is heavily remembered by some fans for the characters that the game introduced. I'll be touching on the mechanics and high level later on, but for now, here are the new additions to the franchise that made their first playable appearance in MK4. Kai, a former member of the White Lotus Society and introduced to be another Liu Kang-style character. Agile, quick, simple to perform moves, another human to defend Earthrealm, basically. FUJIN, the god of wind who was given the new mantle as protector of Earthrealm, with Raiden being fully elevated to Elder God status in MK4's story. I got told off in my competitive history video for not disclosing his franchise debut in Mythologies, but in MK4, this was where we would play as him for the first time. That is what I meant, honest. Quan Chi, another character who was seen before MK4 but playable for the first time in this game. Another sorcerer added to the roster and plays a large part in MK4's story, as he is the one that freed Shinnok from his confines in the Netherrealm. JAREK, believed to be the last remaining member of Kano's Black Dragon clan, he is hunted mercilessly by the Special Forces. However, with the Shinnok threat taking place, JAREK finds himself teaming up with his current Special Forces enemies to fight the fallen Elder God. TANYA, historically a traitor in many games she appears in, and in MK4, she makes her debut as the daughter of Edenia's ambassador to New Realms, who turns on her own realm of Edenia by aiding Shinnok in taking the realm for himself. Her moveset has made her quite popular among MK's more lesser used characters, and she's certainly fun to play in this game too. REIKO, a former general who has served both Shao Kahn and Shinnok, who aided Shinnok in the battle against the Elder Gods. Although he was thought to have been killed during this time, he resurfaces in MK4 as a playable villain. Finally, Shinnok, the main bad guy in MK4 and final boss to play against, but he's playable himself too, making this the first time that a final boss character was able to be played on arcade Mortal Kombat. A fallen Elder God banished to the Netherrealm, he is freed by Quan Chi and aided by Tanya. Now, he seeks revenge against the god who banished him.
Flawless victory.
Right, so now we have the general tone set in place, here is the all-important gameplay. MK4 is often referred to as another version of UMK3, and to be honest, that's not exactly a fair comparison. MK4 has a lot of stuff that makes the game stand out, and some variation to some familiar mechanics. Button-wise, it is as we remember: high punch, low punch, high kick, and low kick. Block button and run are also there, and as it's arcade Mortal Kombat, the machine features the old school cross-shaped button layout. Quite a strain on the hands, but something that you definitely had to get used to. Again, huge thank you to PDP for sending me one of their classic sticks from back in the day. It really does let me relive that classic arcade experience. You still have combo strings, like the dial-in combos from Ultimate MK3, but in 4, they're quite different. You see, although standalone buttons might differ slightly depending on character when it comes to animations, strings themselves are actually universal to all characters, and the system can be quite free-flowing because of it. Allow me to explain. The easiest way to explain it, and try to stay with me here, is that commands are pretty much universal, but the attacks might look slightly different depending on what your character's individual buttons are or whatever. For instance, some characters' high kick might look different, but the string is still universal all the same. Here is a rundown of some universal strings to give you a clear idea. High punch, high kick, roundhouse is a nice 4-hit that works with everyone. The roundhouse can be done earlier if you want off some things. The same enders can be often done with sweep. High punch sweep, high punch sweep, high punch high kick sweep, high kick sweep. You can't always end things with sweep, but as you can see, in a lot of cases, you can. Down high punch is a launching ender that can come from a high kick mid-combo, so high punch, high kick launch, or just high punch, high kick launch. Launching kick also works, which is down high kick, but it takes longer to recover, but can still be used for combos. Some of these strings let you cancel directly into special moves too. This is very much a move-by-move basis and isn't always possible, but for example, this mechanic works incredibly well for characters that have launchers. There is a hit limit on exactly how late you can cancel into a launching special in a combo, but it is great for characters like REIKO, for example, who can use this cancel to get some big damage combos pretty much at all times. This combo string system can feel slightly tricky at first, but ultimately it does let you be quite creative with what buttons you press, and the fact that it's universal makes playing new characters really easy on a basic level. Some of that initial learning process is already done because you already know what the strings will be. Jumping has some unique buttons that do different things in this game, and again, this is new to MK4 at the time. All 4 attacks do something different. Jumping low punch knocks down. Jumping low kick also knocks straight down with a long hitbox. Jump high punch is a UMK3 style jump that can start combo strings, and jump high kick, although it knocks down, can lead to combos because of the height that you get, especially good during combos to connect air specials with. Neutral jump punch and neutral jump kick can both lead to full combos as they go into chain combos. Additionally to this, jump high punch can actually chain into a kick for a second hit, which can be again used for combos if you have air specials. MK4 introduced a sidestep mechanic. You can step in either direction, but it wasn't like other 3D fighters where you can easily move however you want. In MK4, you had to double tap run to sidestep, double tap run on its own to step away from the camera, and hold the down input and double tap to sidestep towards the camera. It's kind of tricky to get at first, and if no one tells you, you might not know about it immediately. Sidestepping had a few uses. The first is to sidestep projectiles, a use I assume a lot of people already expected. Another is to prevent having your back to a wall. Another more unusual use, yet understandable once you get it, is to avoid weird situations where you both get stuck in the corner of a stage and the camera is too zoomed in. Getting this encounter for the first time makes you think the game was really busted, but you can sidestep to avoid it. It didn't really help that sidestep was an unusual input if this happened casually. You basically get stuck against the wall and, yeah, I mean, just look at it. Sidestep is definitely used in competitive play, and it is very much about avoiding those exact bad situations, but it's still not the more traditional use of 3D movement that we'd see in later games, before going back to 2D that is, with MK9. This game had 2 throw styles. The first is a traditional classic MK throw that is activated by pressing low punch at point blank range. You can avoid being thrown by holding the back input, just like all the other older games, but this also applies to the second throw type, which in MK4 is commonly referred to as a bone breaker. This often restands the opponent a lot of times, and is done by low kick at close range instead. A lot more grabs that are done on purpose tend to be the bone breakers, and for some characters can be more offense or sometimes a free hit in general. JAREK, for instance, can get a free unblockable ground pound after his, although it can be punished by certain characters. The regular throw is usually a side effect of pressuring the opponent with low punches. The bone breaker is usually the more deliberate version. Like Mortal Kombat 3, MK4 doesn't have dashes of any kind. Your forward movement lies in the run button. It drains your stamina meter, but allows you to move very quickly for combos or general rushdown. You can find yourself running an MK4 for pretty much whatever reason you want. Some stages have objects on the floor that you can throw by crouching and pressing run. You will throw them towards the opponent for good damage. We can't talk about Mortal Kombat 4 without touching on probably the biggest gameplay addition the game had, which is weapons. It's something the team were very vocal about during promo videos and always the game's biggest selling point in magazines that I can recall. Every character can use a specific command to pull out their weapon. This weapon will have its own attacks and almost always grants the user more range to their attacks. A lot of these attacks with the weapons would be shared among characters, like normals and strings, but there would be some unique normals characters had too, like JAREK's sword uppercut, Reptile's axe swipe, or Scorpion's crouching high punch. Weapons had some smaller details that made them so important. Some characters had certain attacks that would function as amazing anti-airs. REIKO and Jax both have the spiked club, with their back high punch acting as a swipe downwards and is one of the best anti-airs in the whole game. Using a character's weapon equip during a combo string would cancel into the weapon and allow you to equip it during combos while attacking at the same time. Somebody like FUJIN could use a string into crossbow to easily equip it and set up a ranged game. Using a weapon equip command while the weapon is already out causes you to throw it. On hit, it's a great chunk of damage. Be careful though, because you can miss and throw the weapon off screen. It will be gone if that happens. The downside to weapons is that if you get hit at any point, the weapon is immediately dropped. However, simply pressing run while crouched picks the weapon back up. Some of you may have already assumed that you can pick up the opponent's weapon this way, and you would be correct. It actually allows characters to have certain combos they otherwise wouldn't or shouldn't have. FUJIN, for instance, has a corner infinite that breaks max damage if he's using a club weapon, something a few characters like REIKO have, for example, and FUJIN can really take advantage of it. Before we get into the meta and the stuff that you'd play with in an everyday match, there are two techniques used in every single high-level game, and it shapes what we now know as the meta of Mortal Kombat 4. The first is something that I've touched on before and is every bit used in 4 as well, which is glitch jabs. It's often used in other classic MK games too, and is basically the act of being able to perform a block during the recovery frames of an attack. The technique itself is pretty much the same as the older Mortal Kombats. An easy way to try it yourself is to do high punch constantly while at the same time inputting block and the down back motion. You'll notice that you don't get hit even though you're in the middle of an attack. This technique is used in tons of MK4, and pretty much every normal attack you have can be glitch jabbed to stay a lot safer. It's why if you ever did see a competitive match of MK4, it seems like nobody ever really gets hit from range. It's point blank only. The second technique, and one exclusive to Mortal Kombat 4, is the short jump kick, and this one was the major game changer. During your pre-jump frames, after jumping directly up, you can perform a jump kick in that tiny frame window. If you get the timing right, you do a neutral jump kick straight off the ground without actually leaving the ground. Doing a neutral jump kick normally sets up for combo strings and pressure. The short jump kick does the same thing, but it's instant. This technique can be used to start combos for big damage, can be used in combos after stuns for big damage again, but also can be used on block for pressure, as the kick is really plus on block. Players that are excellent with their execution can loop these jump kicks for insane block pressure, but it comes with a price. This technique is very tricky to do, and not just in terms of basic execution either. The straight jump kick is way easier to do on a keyboard or a controller because of how fast you have to do the jump and the kick pretty much simultaneously. It's by far the hardest to perform on an actual arcade stick, particularly the American arcade machines, because of the sticks players had to use. Those kind of sticks have a really heavy spring on them, and for this specific technique, it's hard to do consistently, but this attack opens up so much that you have to learn it. Another danger to this technique is that if you miss the input, you just neutral jump in the opponent's face, which for you means a big punish and damage that you gave up for free. This did open up the usefulness of characters that have air specials though, as a missed short jump kick can simply become an air special instead to try and save yourself. Finally, short jump kicks can also be used to infinite from some strings, depending on your character's attack set. For some characters, something like short jump kick into high punch into short jump kick again will loop until max damage is activated, something I'm explaining next, don't worry. The bottom line is, this technique can infinite, combo, bag damage, or pressure on block. It is one of the absolute techniques to learn in Mortal Kombat 4. Another major addition to MK4, and again would only be present in the MK4 style of game, is maximum damage, a mechanic put in place to basically stop combos from being too big or too long. Many players suspected that, due to the kind of hit-and-miss nature of MK4 as a game in general, max damage kind of felt like a bit of a band-aid fix to stop infinites or giant juggles. You can feel like you're finally getting somewhere with a combo, and then BAM! Max damage, and the combo's over. Anyway, here's how it works. At 40% damage, max damage will activate, either at the 40% limit itself or any hit that goes beyond it. 40% is the max damage threshold. However, it isn't as simple as that. Players could still mess with different combos to squeeze out as much damage as possible before max damage activated. Even with this mechanic in place, we can still find optimals. For example, this specific combo from a jump kick will do just over 40% damage with Scorpion. Max damage is hit and we get about 41%. From the same situation, we can do a different combo, this one involving a short jump kick, and we get significantly more damage, but max damage still activates. The idea is, look for combos with the understanding that max damage is going to be the end of it, but try different combo routes to get as much damage as you can, all the same. Max damage could be broken though, and it's because some attacks retain their on-hit animation even though max damage activates. The right characters in the right circumstances can activate max damage, stand up, and then combo off the animation. FUJIN can do this with a spiked club weapon by getting max damage, then the wind lift straight from getting up to reset the combo and get even more damage. It's pretty broken, although corner specific. Scorpion can do this too if max damage activates on Spear. Situational again, I know, but it's to demonstrate the idea. Max damage can sometimes give you two combos in one, like Scorpion in these examples. I do need to mention that you can turn off max damage in some cases, but it's only for combo videos really. Players would still play with max damage if it was a high-level, proper match. Now, we've covered the basics, some of the main tricks and MK4 specific mechanics. It is time to break down what the meta of MK4 is with all of these combined. MK4 played similar to UMK3 in that glitch jabs ran rampant to keep you safe and the run button was your source of pressure and rushdown, but here are some of the major changes that made MK4 more of a poke-heavy hit-and-run style game. Moves had a lot of knockback on block. Even mid-screen. I mean, look at how much knockback even single normals have. This means you can't be as constantly aggressive off a single low punch because one hit sends you to a safer range. Chip damage on block was very high though, so those singular hits and attacks, they still meant something. It's just more of a means of poking some damage piece by piece instead of the constant run jabs that its previous title was built around. On the subject of jab pressure, another major difference is pushback in the corner. It is extreme mid-screen, but even more so when the opponent's back is to the wall. The constant corner jabs that you'd see in other games just isn't as possible in Mortal Kombat 4 at all. Crouching low kicks and sweeps were both important pokes. Low kicks served as a get-off-me tool to push back to a safer range, and sweeps just had good range in general. But they are punishable on whiff and on block against a few characters, so not totally risk-free. Cancelling a single button into sweep as a two-hit combo string is also a popular method of hit-and-run offense, as on hit you get a knockdown and on block, again, pushback puts you at a pretty okay range. Weapons were very important, and if a character had a strong weapon, like Sub-Zero for example, you'd definitely try and use it if you can. The extra range and poke potential fits well in a game that is already designed around range, right? Poking and a hit-and-run style of play, the weapons fit that game plan extremely well. A single game of MK4 would involve tons of run pressure, but built on single hits or shorter combos a lot of the time, ending in sweep. If you feel like your combo string might actually connect though, you'll still have a combo ready to capitalize, and characters that could launch or stun from early strings had a great time doing that. This layer of run-based offense would change a lot once a talented player started using loads of short jump kicks, because now you have a dangerous tool that leads to big damage on hit and more pressure on block. It was the ultimate tool, but the risk of a raw neutral jump if you mistimed it meant you had to be damn good to never mess it up. You could go a whole round without using it, sure, but if you can, it's worth learning. This goes for combos too. Mess up a short jump kick and the combo gets completely dropped, but get it and you just added a chunk of damage to each and every combo that you did. MK4 was fast-paced, very footsie heavy thanks to pushback of single hits, and high damage in short bursts thanks to max damage. It truly is not just the UMK3 clone that some people paint the game as. So, We've set the scene for the game, a lot of different tricks and the basic idea of a competitive level match, but MK is a franchise famous for its characters, and some made their debut in this game, as we've covered already. Others were given some new variety of playstyle that we thought we were already familiar with. As always, I'm not going to cover the entire roster here, but for those more specific to MK4 and in some cases impactful to the game's meta in general, here are some more iconic characters and what they brought to the competitive MK4 table. I want to give a huge thanks to Hanzo from Venezuela for giving me a lot of information about these characters as a true arcade original. Kai was overall not an amazing character, but his handstand stance was tricky and his weapon was extremely solid because of the attacks that came from it. Outside of that though, he had low damage output and slow fireballs, although their vertical angles were definitely interesting. Kai across the board was not very good. Tanya was said by some to be the best character in the entire game. Her sweep was almost unpunishable, and her small size makes a lot of high attacks completely miss against her. On top of this, her access to max damage combos was a lot easier thanks to her drill special attack and amazing launcher. This drill was not only a combo tool, but thanks to its startup speed could punish things like sweep for a combo once again. Finally, her unique weapon in the boomerang gave her more range, and combined with her fireballs, she could play offense or defense at will. Sub-Zero, the biggest keep-away character in the entire game thanks to one of the most dangerous versions of Sub's ice clone in all of Mortal Kombat. Not only is it a great defensive move and a way of slowing down the neutral, you can use the ice clone in combos after a launch. Slide is fast and can punish tons of moves, and his weapon has the ability to freeze the opponent as well, on top of added range. Sub doesn't deal crazy damage in this game, but his highly defensive style makes him one of the better characters in the entire game. REIKO, one of the more enjoyable characters in the game, but hard to master thanks to his execution barrier. Two moves exist that can lead to bigger combos, that's teleport and flip kick. Combine both of these for some high damage combos at all times. His weapon is slow but does great damage. His projectile is large and hard to jump over at close ranges. The Bone Breaker throw is one of the better ones in the game due to its mix-up potential afterwards. Overall, REIKO is a damaging character, but his larger combos are definitely not easy. JAREK, a character mostly known for his weapon in this game, which is a giant machete. His specials aren't particularly good, except for ground pound, but even that can be punished against some characters. The two keys to his weapon being good lies in an easy launcher, which can combo into itself, and a low punch slash that punishes a lot of attacks on block. JAREK also abused a weird glitch with his weapon out, when if you did a close high kick into a crouching high punch, on block, an uppercut would come out being a lot safer. On hit, the machete uppercut lands for a big damage combo. Kind of a built-in option select that the game does for you. Very interesting for JAREK. JAREK is quite a simple character indeed. Reptile, another character whose weapon completely transforms his usefulness. His weapon launcher is an attack that can be glitch jabbed, which is something weapons can't usually do in this game, making it easily one of the best normals in the whole game. Outside of weapon, his cruel is excellent for anti-air and anti-cross-up, and it launches on its later frames. His general toolset is strong, but his invisibility is hard to master. Quan Chi is tragically one of the game's weaker characters, as pretty much all of his specials are not particularly good, definitely more shallow than other characters. His redeeming qualities are that he can actually steal the opponent's weapon, which can grant some new combos, but he also just so happens to have the attack set that allows the high punch, short jump kick to infinite. So there is that, at least. Shinnok. He has the ability to morph into any character, but he only steals their moves, not their visuals. This means there's no startup animation and a more immediate game plan. As you might expect, it allows for some pretty insane combos too. He does lack his own unique specials though, so morphing, unlike Shang Tsung, is mandatory here. One cool thing about Shinnok here is that if you're yet to draw your weapon, you can become any character you want, draw their weapon, and then you have it for the rest of the round. This will include other morphs, so you can use something like REIKO's combos while holding Sub-Zero's ice staff. It's pretty neat. Jax, a character primarily known in this game for his speed, as Dash Punch can punish every single normal on block. While his ground pound is slow and reactable, his backbreaker makes cashing out combos for big damage very simple indeed. His weapon is the same as REIKO's, so the range and anti-air potential is still there. His projectile is nice and quick, and his chain grab can be deadly if you learn the execution, although it's kinda tricky. FUJIN. His range and damage were both excellent in the right hands. Not the fastest character in the world, but his wind lift and slam combined meant that one lift could bag huge damage in general. His dive kick could combo in similar ways thanks to lift, and he had one of the more interesting weapons in crossbow. Generally, he was a mixture of Ermac and Kung Lao from Ultimate MK3, essentially. If I missed a character that you're interested in, I am sorry about that. I wanted to give a wide idea, but if you want to see a specific character across the years, I do have a video series for that, so stay tuned as always. When it comes to the arcade days of this game, the high-level players, the arcade heads that would go to a spot and stick a whole lot of money into a machine and play tons of games with each other, there's a few things to remember with MK4 specifically. There's no getting around the fact that in North America, it wasn't a major smash hit on the arcade scene. I have to give a massive thank you to TABMOK for providing me with this road tour footage that he captured years ago, during the actual road tour itself. He's uploaded it recently, and as far as I'm aware, it is pretty much exclusive footage that hasn't really been seen by anyone until now, so again, thank you so much. The Mortal Kombat Road Tour was something that happened in North America before the game was released. MK4 branded trucks would tour different locations with an early access build of the game, so fans of Mortal Kombat could get hands-on and experience the game before it was publicly available. From what we can research and read up about online, and more importantly for me, the stories I've heard from community members at the time, the Road Tour did create a lot of buzz for the game. The news were covering it all over the place, so MK, as you imagine, was quite the hot talking point. This build was an early revision of the game, so a lot of things were subject to change, as you expect with even pre-release builds in 2020. But one cool thing was that in these earlier revisions, Noob Saibot is actually a playable character. We only know this via ancient camera recordings of the game in action, and we don't see a ton of moves on display from the people using him, but it's always interesting to me how at one point in arcade MK4, Noob would make an appearance. He was later replaced by REIKO, and then playable later down the line in other versions of MK4. A story for another time. MK4 was said to be pretty eye-catching. The Richard DeVizio Quan Chi image on the side of the cabinet certainly stares into your soul in the best possible way, and other 3D fighting games were just starting to pick up at the time, so MK4 definitely had some competition, but the 3D visuals were by themselves a selling point. Every game was stepping into 3D, and MK was always a franchise not afraid to take advantage of new technology. To remind everybody, this was around the same time arcades were starting to decline in popularity, because of just how good home consoles and their games were starting to become. Players didn't need to go to an arcade to get these cutting-edge experiences like they could before, and MK4, in some places, was described as pretty expensive to play. A lot of arcade machines would cost about 50 cents to play, but to start in Mortal Kombat 4, in some places, it flat out cost $1. Already the game is more expensive to even play than a lot of other titles at the time. Mortal Kombat 4 would undergo 2 revisions during its time. The first public version was Revision 2. It added characters not in the Road Tour build, changed some weapons around, and was by all means the first proper version that players got access to. Revision 3 added a second fatality for everybody, fixed a bunch of bugs, changed weapons again, and introduced the meat secret that many people remember. I have covered this in my competitive history of meat video. My point is, some arcades wouldn't even get Revision 3, so quite a few people would have remembered Revision 2, but would play the new stuff later down the line or on console. Mortal Kombat 4 had a large buzz of popularity in the early stages, but that buzz was supposedly short-lived. Due to no fault in the game itself, mind you, it just simply came out at a bad time for arcades. The home console market was far too dominant, and arcades around the world were struggling to compete with the convenience and cost of home systems. MK4 having such fantastic home ports further hurt the usefulness of playing MK4 in arcade for many players. Sadly, this would alienate a lot of arcade players, because it's not like today when you can use a controller of choice on anything you wanted. For a lot of old systems, you kinda had to play on the controller that you were given. Imagine being an arcade Mortal Kombat player and having to go from this to this just to play Mortal Kombat 4. It's not exactly a simple transition. Now, MK4 did have its community and players that would grind it out in practice. For instance, this was a game that Tom Brady was said to be very dominant in, as almost every old school MK player around the MK4 timeframe would mention him as their pick for the best at the time. You could still play the game at venues and get better, just like the others, but if we're talking history of the arcade title, the well-documented decline of arcade popularity was the largest contribution to MK4 being the final title to be featured on an arcade machine. Truly the end to a significant piece of Mortal Kombat's history. North America was always going to have people that played though, as MK has always been such an American-dominated game. But in South America, MK4 would also have, and to this day, continue to have some players that will jump on and play sets against each other at a high level. Thanks to community members such as Hanzo or MGO, I've been able to find out a fair bit from the communities in South America as well. What I'm about to cover here is mostly taken from the extensive discussions I've had with Hanzo, who is as old school as it gets. His history comes from the community in Venezuela. You see, although the arcade era of MK4 was not particularly popular over time in North America, in some parts of South America it seemed that the game was quite popular indeed. The fast-paced 2D gameplay translated onto a 3D space in a community that was really big on 3D fighters. Supposedly games like Tekken took quite a while to develop over there, whereas MK was an already established title. He recalls that you were still able to find random MK4 cabinets around with good players to play against as late as 2004. Even a couple of decent players to fight against would go a very long way if your goal was simply to get better. There would, however, very much be a divide between those that played on arcade and those that played on console. The console version had minimal differences if we're talking about the general gameplay, but the big change was control method, and on console, access to a training mode. He worded console as being an acquired taste. Most of the old school players never really learned how to play on pad as the difference is so extreme. New blood players were worded to be more combo oriented and a bit more flashy, loads of rushdown and emphasis on straight jump kicks, the short jump kicks that I described earlier, whereas arcade MK4 is a bit more grounded and footsie based. Short jump kicks were a lot harder to perform on arcade machines and easier on a pad or keyboard, and in modern times, emulation is a popular way of playing due to ease of access, controller variety, and in some cases, netplay support. But offline is still by all means the best way to experience MK4 in general. Although strong players would still exist by all means, Hanzo too recalls the arcade decline taking place due to the dominant home console market. Even after the arcade crash though, MK4 players could still be found, and pretty much nobody I've been able to contact can really recall much tournament culture for arcade MK4. However, there was a decent-sized tournament held by Hanzo and his MKK team in 2012. 26 players entered, which is a great number for old-school arcade, and we got an opportunity to see some high-level players having great sets with each other. Sadly, it doesn't appear that all of the tournament was recorded, and recorded competitive footage from back then is almost impossible to come by anyway. There are great videos out there of match-by-match sets with great players, but again, a lot of this footage that you've been watching here is really old, so the camera quality isn't so good, but hey, what can you do? I'm just happy that it exists. When talking about MK4 players, we're talking passion all the way through. A more niche title with a hardcore following. As always, these videos take me a really long time to make, and I know it's been a while since my last MK meta. I am sorry for that, but I do very much hope that this latest episode was worth the wait. Mortal Kombat 4 is a significant part of the franchise's history. It's had players over time really grind out and discover the competitive nature. It is one of the absolute hardest videos to research, but it's important to me that the MK meta keeps competitive Mortal Kombat history alive in any capacity. For the players that really set those competitive foundations that would eventually become what we now know as competitive NetherRealm fighting games around the world. I want to extend a huge thank you to Tom Brady, Hanzo, Summoning, MGO, and Dead for their collective efforts in providing me information, videos, and anything else that contributed towards this episode being possible in the first place. I want to give another thank you to TABMOK for sending me some of that exclusive road tour footage that has existed for a long time but never really been in a public setting. That footage is also very much appreciated, and thank you for the opportunity. Hanzo has an active YouTube channel to this day that focuses on old fighting games, and if you want to check out match footage of the exact games that I cover here, it can all be found over there, so I'll link his channel in this video. Mortal Kombat 4 is nostalgic to many of us, but to some of the newer generation, a title that people may not have seen that much of. Hopefully this episode has been what you might have hoped, and if anyone has their own arcade stories of MK4, I encourage you to share them in the comments section, like all of my other MK metas. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.